I'm going to make a very simple claim. Women are more profitable than oil. And I do mean this in the very literal sense of profitable. I do not mean this metaphorically speaking. I mean it in hard cash, in dollars and euros, or kroner or øre, as we would say in Norwegian. So, if you wanted to be a really rich and successful dictator, your main asset would be the women of your society. Please don't get the wrong idea. I'm not encouraging you to become dictators. Please just join me in establishing this very simple fact, that investing in women, giving women opportunities to use their talents and make their way in life, it creates riches not only for the individual, but also riches for the society. For me to explain this properly, we need to go back in time. We need to go all the way to the west coast of Norway, to Bjørheimsbygd, in the early 70s and 80s. Bjørheimsbygd is, by the way, where I'm from, as you probably gathered. It's a teeny tiny village on the west coast of Norway. And I'd claim that you wouldn't very often see a Muslim woman coming from a teeny tiny village, having Pakistani parents and a working class background, becoming the youngest ever minister in the government of the country in question. You need more than your average hero, and you need more than just what one person can do. And I've thought about this many times. I could have been just as hardworking, getting up in the early mornings, getting to bed in the late evenings, working on my speeches, getting into politics. But I still wouldn't be able to reach the same kinds of heights in any other country. If all the other factors in my life, gender, minority background, working class family, if all of that was the same. And I think this is the case for many people. Many of the female leading figures in Norway, being in public or private sector or in politics, or the many women in the Norwegian labor force. There's an African proverb that you need a village to raise a child, right? You've probably heard it. But it's also true that you need a whole society to create individual success. If you'd ask an average Norwegian, you could ask anyone, just do the exercise please, why is it that Norway is one of the richest of the rich countries of the world? Now, most Norwegians would say that, the thing is, in the early 70s, we found oil on the continental shelf of Norway, which was great. And we made some good decisions on how to manage those assets. For example, we made the Norwegian State Pension Fund, also known as the Norwegian Oil Fund, and that's how we became rich. However, that's not really it. The main reason behind the Norwegian wealth are the Norwegian women. There are no genetic predispositions that make Norwegian women more profitable than other women, obviously, so it has to be something else. And I think it has to do with the 3 W's. It has to do with work, welfare, and well-organized labor markets, which leads you in turn to the 4th W, the profitable women. We'll start with the well-organized labor markets. My parents, they came to Norway from Pakistan in the early 70s as labor migrants. And obviously they didn't know anybody, they didn't know the language, the culture. When you're new in a country like that, you're quite vulnerable to exploitation or mistreatment. That's the case in many other countries. If you go as a labor migrant to many Middle Eastern countries, you live under the risk that your passport might be taken away from you. You risk not getting a proper wage. You risk that the contract you end up signing on is a slave contract. When you're new in Norway as a labor migrant, like my parents were, you're met with labor unions. And labor unions, they make sure that you're not exploited. And they also know, the labor unions, that if they in any way condone mistreatment just because the person in question is a non-Norwegian, they may end up creating a parallel black market, which in turn will decrease the regular Norwegians' wages and working conditions. So it's a no-go. You need more, though, than the well-organized labor markets. You need welfare as well. And we have a tendency, when we tell our stories of success, that we glorify pain. We love the stories of the underdog, getting back at society, getting back at everybody who didn't believe in him, hanging on to his dream by his fingernails and barely, just barely, making it to the top. We love that. But these stories, they make it sound like having a safety net is a bad thing, that it makes us lazy or unproductive or less creative. But there's a lot of research and experience that proves otherwise. For instance, the UN has many times said that Norway is one of the best countries of the world to live in. The Legatum Institute, it creates a prosperity index, which is made on many different factors. They look at education, on healthcare, personal freedom, how easy it is to start a business. And even according to the Legatum Prosperity Index, Norway is one of the overall best countries in the world. In addition to that, you have the World Bank. They create a report called Ease of Doing Business. And it shows that Norway is one of the top 10 countries in the world doing business in. And in addition to that, you have Save the Children. They claim that Norway is the best country for mothers. Now, there are no rankings for best countries for fathers. I don't know why that is. But if there was such a ranking, I'm quite sure Norway would do quite well in that ranking as well. And this is, of course, no coincidence. Being a good society to live in, that's also a good society to do business in. It gives people opportunities. It makes it easier for both women and men to make their own way in life. Now, what kind of welfare measures are we talking about? It could be childcare facilities, it could be parental leave. Because when women don't work, what are the reasons? The reasons could be social, they could be cultural, they could be religious. It could also just be the basic economics of the family, because for most families, if the father stays at home, the family would be losing more money that way. So the mother stays at home. Or the father risks being mocked at work by his friends. So she ends up staying at home instead. In Norway, we have 59 weeks of parental leave for each child. You could see that as an expense for society, or you could see it as an investment for the success and fulfillment of society, for economic development. The third W is also important. The third W is, I would say, it's a non-brainer. In the way that if half of your population is not working, if the women are not working, you're not going to make the amount of money that you would have, you're not going to recruit the amount of talent that you could have, and you're not going to be as successful as a society as you would have if you were recruiting from the whole pool of people that you have in your country. In Norway's case, if the number of working women in Norway were as low as the OECD average, we would be losing out on values equivalent to the Norwegian oil fund. That's 8,000 billion Norwegian kroner. Almost 1,000 billion US dollars. So women are more profitable than oil. And how's that for a crazy dictator strategy? Get your women liberated, get them out there working, using their talents, and you will be a rich and successful dictator. The only thing is, if you do that, if you invest in work and welfare and well-organized labor markets, you do risk not being a dictator for very long. Even a Muslim woman in her 30s from a village with Pakistani parents and a working class background might end up a politician on your level. So being a dictator is probably not a very smart strategy, but investing in women is a very smart strategy. It creates riches for the individual and riches for society. Thank you.